October. Football season continues to pick up, but we, obviously they're pumping the brakes on the Titans and Steelers, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. But we'll do our picks first. And last week, Robert and myself were 3-1, pretty good weeks. Justin 1-3. So things are kind of tightening up a little bit. I'm still on the rear there, but I'm back to 500 and looking forward to making a move.
Tightening up?
Yeah. I picked up 2 games.
On who?
On
Not
Justin.
me.
No, I get it. You've only missed 1 game all year. You're doing pretty good.
I've missed 2 games.
Listen here to both of you 3-1 guys from last week.
Oh boy!
I'd like to go back to a NFC Championship game a couple years ago when the Saints were absolutely robbed of a win because of a lack of a pass interference call. And Vegas, this is Vegas, the people who handle all the betting, they basically canceled out all the bets because because the Saints got screwed because it was such a bad call. And I would just like to say that there was a similarly bad call that happened at the end of the Bills-Rams game, which, had it not taken place, I would have gotten the points for that game, not you 2 scrubs, and we'd all be 2-2 for the week. So I just like to throw that out there that, yes, I may have went 1-3 last week, but there is a big fat asterisk right next to your 3-1 records, my friends. Big fat asterisk.
Yeah, Robert, I'll let you handle this one. Go ahead and set them straight.
Handle it. You wouldn't even touch it anyway. You'd squirrel your way to the next topic and not even touch on it.
Okay.
Look, Mike Pereira talked about this. Blandino, as useless as he is, talked about this. They both agreed that it was pass interference because when you look on replay, the guy is holding Gabriel Davis's shoulder pads, and when Davis tries to get out of his break, he's still holding on to him. It's a penalty. Boo-hoo. I'll add, though, that one play didn't decide that game. The Rams could have stopped the Bills on 3rd and 22 earlier in that drive and didn't. So, I can't feel sorry for them. This is just like Sean Payton and all his belly aching over what happened in that very game that you mentioned. You had a chance to win it multiple times and you blew it. So I can't feel bad for you because of one penalty. Was it borderline? Sure. If it went the other way, if it was called on the Bills, would I be upset about it? Maybe, but not after giving up a play on 3rd and 22.
I am stunned that the Bills fan says that was the correct call. Stunned. I'll tell you what. No homers here. No bias here. Get out of here. It was a bad call. The Bills should be 2-1, and you guys should have went 2-2 on the week. I don't care what Pereira or Blandino says from the booth because guess what? They're in the booth for a reason. If they're so smart, go and ref the games because obviously the NFL needs it. These refs continue to be terrible.
Hey, they're smarter because they're getting paid a hell of a lot more than the officials are. So
yes,
I can't disrespect the game, but look, that call. I mean, I remember a few years back in London when the Bills were playing there, and there was a call where Nickel Roby, before he was Nickel Roby Coleman, made slight contact. They were both going for the ball. There was contact, shoulder-to-shoulder contact, and the refs threw the flag, pass interference, blah, blah, blah. It was a terrible call. In my opinion, much worse than the call that was made the other day, but it involved Roby Coleman. So, he has a knack for these things. But, I get where the Rams are coming from because you would like to see that you would like to see them, let them play in that situation. But look, Pereira said it himself. They've made it a point of emphasis this year to call more pass interference, call more defensive holding, call more illegal contact. So they're going to do it. And the players, I'm assuming, know this. So they're the ones that have to change. If that was a year ago, would that have been called? Probably not. But hey, them's the breaks, as Shearer's people say.
Sheriff's people. That's interesting. All right, let's get to these picks. All right, our first game is
Folks.
Indianapolis plus 2.5 at Chicago. I know Justin's a huge fan of how the Bears do, and of course, we know last week they benched his favorite quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, for Foles, and Foles led him to the great comeback against the choking Falcons. The Colts, they're middling. I mean, they're nothing spectacular, but they're plus 2.5 on the road against the Bears. The Bears are undefeated, kind of surprisingly so. And I think Nick Foles is going to basically pick up where he left off when he was with Philly, not with Jacksonville. And he's going to lead the Bears and a cover over the Colts. Justin, you go first because I know you love talking about Mitch Trubisky.
Well, as a matter of fact, I don't love talking about him. He sucks. I prefer talking about quarterbacks who aren't terrible. But alas, we have to talk about this game. The Bears are the most fraudulent of the 3-0 teams, of the 6 or 7 that are remaining. They should have lost week 1, but the Lions rookie running back dropped an easy touchdown that both of you guys could have caught at the end of the game. He drops it, the Bears win. Week 2, they barely squeak by the Giants, who have proven to be one of the most pathetic teams so far this season. And then last week, as you guys mentioned, they took advantage of another Atlanta Falcons choke job. Nick Foles comes in, plays like the hero. He didn't really play that well. Like, you look at his final stat line, he gets the win. You guys know how I feel about the whole QB wins thing. He gets the win, but he didn't even throw for 200 yards. His yards per attempt well below 7. This wasn't some heroic effort like he posted in the Super Bowl this year, a couple years ago. Nick Foles is fine. I don't think he's such a giant upgrade over Trubisky that it's going to change the fortunes of the Bears season. They're an average team. The Colts, they're 2-1. They've had 2 butt kickings so far. They crushed the Vikings, who are not good, and they crushed the Jets last week, who are also not good. I trust the Colts a little bit more. Phillip Rivers is not off to a great start, but I like their defense, and I'll take the points. I think these teams are relatively even, but I'll take the points. I'll say the Colts will cover.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
Robert?
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's tough to figure out exactly how good or how bad these teams are because of the competition they played in the first 3 weeks. And, I agree with Ritz. Foles, adds a little bit. I think his heyday as his record shows, has been with the Eagles. When he is outside of the Eagles organization, he's been mediocre. I'll offer the stint with the Rams as Exhibit A in that case. But this is a tough one. I'm going to take the Bears in this one to squeak out a win. I just think that these 2 teams are pretty even. Might be a low-scoring game, but I think the Bears have just a little bit more to offer, on both sides of the ball, and they'll get to win and be the worst 4-0 team I've ever seen.
Next game, the red-hot defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs at home against New England, and Kansas City is -7. Now, Robert loves to say, Chris always talks about these old axioms, team on a short week, division game. All right, well, Kansas City is playing on a short week, but you know something? It doesn't matter. This team is just smoking hot. Now, look, New England, maybe a couple of years ago, when they played the AFC Championship game in Kansas City and they won, maybe you give New England a chance here. I don't give New England any chances here because I don't think their defense is up to it. The offense, Cam Newton's done a good job so far, and I think they can score some points. But I like Kansas City. It's -7. I like Kansas City to win at least by 7 and cover against New England. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs in this one too. Impressive win over the Ravens after crapping their pants against the Chargers the week before. Yes, they did win that game, but it certainly wasn't in impressive fashion. This past week, however, they played pretty well. And I think they'll keep that going. The Patriots, I talked about Cam Newton last week, capable of putting up some big numbers, but I think Chiefs are a little bit better, obviously, than the Seahawks. And I think that defense, while you got Bill Belichick on the sideline still, they're obviously missing some key pieces that are either opting out or left in free agency this year. So I think they'll struggle just a little bit more against the Chiefs in this game.
Justin.
Well, I just want to commend Bill Belichick for continuing to do what he's done throughout his whole coaching career. His thing has always been, as a defensive coach, we're going to take away what the other team's best player is, best offensive player is. And Darren Waller for the Raiders 2 weeks ago on Monday Night Football looked like the best tight end in football. And this week, the Raiders play the Patriots, and Belichick holds him to like 2 catches for 9 yards. And on top of that, they held Josh Jacobs to 70 yards. So I don't think this Patriots defense is quite what it was, but they're still a unit to be reckoned with. They're smart. They're well coached. I don't think they'll let this game totally get away from them against the Chiefs, but we saw the Chiefs really at their best. I think the most impressive win so far in 3 weeks by any team was their 2-touchdown win over the Ravens Monday night. And frankly, it wasn't even that close. The score is deceiving. The Chiefs are clicking on all cylinders after, of course, I called them out last week for not looking all that impressive through the first 2 weeks. Mahomes looked like he was sick of the Russell Wilson MVP talk, and the defense kind of embarrassed Lamar Jackson and crew. So while giving credit to Belichick and what he's done so far this year, I think the Chiefs just have too much firepower. They are head and shoulders above everyone else in the AFC, and I think they'll show that against the Patriots. I'll take the Chiefs.
All righty. Our next game, the Los Angeles Chargers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 7.5-point favorites. The Chargers, they've had some injury issues. They've had to go with their quarterback. Tampa Bay, rough start to begin with, but I think they're starting to pick up. I like the Bucs to cover -7.5 against the Chargers. Go ahead, Justin. Your thoughts on this game?
I don't have many thoughts other than I think that Tom Brady still doesn't look that great, but he's getting the job done. That's kind of the story of his career. Tampa Bay is going to be without Chris Godwin. I think that's a loss. Fournette's not practicing today. Not that he's touched the ball a whole lot, especially last week. But I'm done with the Chargers. Okay, like between team doctors puncturing lungs of their own players to all these injuries they seem to have every year. Every time I get on board, they disappoint me. So I'm just going to take the Bucs because I've had enough of the Chargers.
Robert?
Yeah, I think the Chargers are just, they're going to struggle this year. I think that's what a lot of people predicted before the season, that this was before lungs were getting punctured and everything else that they've dealt with. The Bucs, I think after that week 1 loss to the Saints, which just based on how the Saints have played, the Bucs are probably kicking themselves for that defeat at this point. They've looked pretty good. I think they've improved every week. Brady, to Ritz's point, he's not lighting it up. He's not putting up huge numbers, but he's getting the job done. And that offense has played pretty well. The defense has played pretty well too, which is important. I think that's important for them if they're going to contend in not only the NFC South, but in that conference. So I'm taking the Bucs in this one. I think it'll be a comfortable win for old Bag of Bones.
Our last game, Robert's Buffalo Bills, 3-0, looking pretty good. We've already kind of talked about the win against the Rams, so we won't go into that too much. But they are at Las Vegas against the Raiders, +2.5. They're favorites on the road. I think the Raiders, they have not.
That's not how lines work, Chris.
I'm sorry, -2.5, you want me to say? All right. Anyways, the Bills are favored by 2.5. Okay. So, yeah, Buffalo is just – here's another team that, again, maybe they're not at the Chiefs level, but they're getting pretty darn close, and they're playing great. And the way they came – I'm sorry, not the way they came back, but they had that huge lead against the Rams. Then they kind of, choked a little bit of a way there, and then they were trailing, and then Josh Allen led them on the great comeback. So I like the Bills to continue to roll against a Vegas team that some people thought was good. I didn't, but I like the Bills to cover. They're going to win by at least 3 points. Justin, your thoughts on this game?
Flat out, I just think the Bills are a better team. They deserve to be, I think, higher than 2.5 point favorites. I've seen it as high as 3. I'd have them 4.5. I'm not, I think the Raiders kind of suffered a little bit from coming back down to earth after that big Monday night win a couple weeks ago. We already talked about their performance against the Patriots. But yeah, I'm gonna save some of my comments on Josh Allen for a minute from now. But I'll just say I'll take the Bills, who I think will cover comfortably in this game.
Well, we already know who Robert's going to pick, right, Robert?
Well, I've already been accused of being a homer, so let's double down on being a homer. I'm taking the Bills, of course. The thing about that Raiders win over the Saints is, I think that it was more about the Saints kind of being exposed, as Ritz calls them, noodle arm being exposed, not having the skill set that he once did, and certainly missing Michael Thomas. That certainly hurt, but also not being able to throw a pass, farther than 6 yards. The Raiders came back down to earth last week in week 3. They, with that defeat. So I think the Bills should win this one comfortably. Look, that second half against the Rams, more like a quarter and a half against the Rams, the defense didn't play well, and that's certainly a concern. It's great that the Bills have the offensive firepower to compete in these shootouts, because it wasn't too long ago that these games would have gotten away from them and they wouldn't be competitive. So it's nice, but at the same time, you want that top 5 defense back, because you pair those together, and you're not just talking about a playoff team. You're talking about a legitimate AFC contender and a Super Bowl contender, quite frankly. So, that defense needs to play better, because there's going to come games, I'm thinking of the Patriots, where Bill Belichick is going to do everything he can to stop that offense, and it's going to come down to great defensive play. And if the Bills don't have it, they're not going to be successful in those games. So, but for this week, Bills will win 4-0.
All right, we're going to move on to our other sports topics. Earlier today, it was announced that the Titans-Steelers game, scheduled for Sunday, is being postponed to Monday and possibly even Tuesday. The Titans have an outbreak of COVID on their team. I believe there's 6 players and a few staff members, and the NFL shut down their facility this week, and they're doing contact tracing and trying to basically stay ahead of this, that it doesn't spread. And that the other thing was that the Titans, I believe, played the Vikings last week, and I guess the Vikings have checked out okay so far. That could change it in the future, but for now we don't think so. But we knew this was going to happen. It's happened in Major League Baseball. Any team that's not in a bubble like the NBA or the NHL is going to have this happen. It's only a matter of time. You can't escape it. Even the NFL can't escape it. So, now we're coming to a point where we're seeing an impact on the schedule. I mean, we're having a game that is being moved. And if it's a day or two, I guess that's not that big a deal, but we're not seeing cancellations. We're not seeing a shift where the game is being rescheduled to months from now or whatever. And I just think the NFL, I think they do take this thing seriously. I know they've been clamping down on coaches not wearing masks on the sidelines. They've even talked about forfeiting draft picks if coaches are caught without their masks on. A lot of coaches pull their masks down to communicate, and they're not supposed to do that. I think you're going to see more coaches wearing the visor or the clear plastic visor like Andy Reid there, because they keep pulling their mask down to try to talk. And I think that might be the best solution. But, for the NFL to talk about taking away draft picks, I think that's as draconian as can get for the NFL to do something like that. So, because money is one thing, draft picks are another. So like I said, it'll be interesting to see how this has an impact this week on the schedule. And like I said, with the coaches being told that, like, you got to keep your mask up the whole time. You can't keep taking it up and down. And the other thing, last thing, and I'll let you guys get going, is this situation where the Raiders had some type of, I don't know if it was a fan event or something, or some type of off-field event where they were not wearing any type of mask. I don't know why the NFL would have any team have any type of event where the players are mixing with fans or anybody who's not involved with the team. I just think that is completely negligent and really short-sighted and just plain dumb. And you're playing with fire. And it'll be interesting to see if anything happens with the Raiders moving forward. So go ahead, guys, have at it. The Titans Steelers NFL COVID situation.
Well, for me, starting with the Titans and the Steelers, this is unfortunate, especially, with the Titans situation. And, there's obviously some cases there, and they're doing testing. My understanding is that that postponement to Monday and Tuesday is contingent upon tests coming back, and if they are negative, then that game will go ahead. If not, then you're going to have to cancel the game and reschedule it for another time. Now, how they do that will definitely require a shakeup in the rest of the schedule, because I don't believe the Titans and the Steelers have the same bye week. So it's not as simple as just moving it to another week. This is, you mentioned the Raiders thing, Chris, and I read about that today because I know, the Bills are playing the Raiders this week. And, obviously there's some concern there that maybe those guys exposed themselves to COVID at this event because there was no mask wearing. There were photos of guys like Derek Carr, posing for photos with fans at this event. Apparently the country club that hosted it got fined because they violated multiple COVID-19 regulations in Nevada. So that's pretty serious. And we'll see if the NFL does anything about it, but not a lot of people happy about that. But look, this is the tough thing with football is that, you have a lot of people on these rosters, you have a lot of players, 53 on the active, and then you got a bunch of other players who are part of the practice squads and all this other stuff. And then you've got obviously the staff. You need everybody going in the same direction and abiding by the guidelines. And if one person, that's all it takes, is one person goes against it, or in the Raiders case, multiple people, then you might have a problem. And that could affect not only the team that you play that week, but, it could have a domino effect. And so, I think, there is that responsibility. You mentioned the coaches, Chris. They have to take responsibility. They're shown on the sidelines all the time. Just wear your damn mask. And then for the players, what you do off the field can impact the activities on it. So being responsible away from practice and away from the facilities and away from the games is important too. And hopefully this is a one-off. I worry that we'll see more of these as the season progresses, but hopefully the teams really take this seriously so that we don't have a similar situation going forward.
Go ahead, Justin.
Well, concerning these penalties for the coaches and teams who aren't following these mask rules, I don't think it's, to use your word, Chris, draconian at all to penalize these teams' draft picks, because we've seen so far that simply penalizing them with fines has not been enough.
Well, that's what I mean. They've got to get stricter. That's why they're doing the draft picks now. So, yeah.
So, listen, these teams have unlimited money. These coaches are paid very well. Yes, it stinks for Sean Payton if he gets fined $100,000 for not wearing his mask. But at the end of the day, it's a minor slap on the wrist. You want to start forcing these teams to follow the rules, then yeah, take away draft picks, because that's the ultimate capital in the NFL. And it shouldn't be that difficult. Okay. And this is as much a commentary on everyone as it is NFL coaches, but wearing a mask is not that difficult. It's not that prohibitive. Just do it. Okay. Just for the safety of yourself, for the safety of others. It's showing respect to other people. Just wear your mask. Okay. As far as the scheduling with these games, and kind of the weirdness of this Titans-Steelers situation, it stinks if the game has to get moved around. It's going to be inconvenient, but the NFL has shown several times in recent history that it's willing to get a little weird to get these games in without massive scheduling changes. I just looked it up. I think back to 2010, multiple incidents with the Vikings where their roof caved in at the old Metrodome, and they had to play a home game in Detroit last minute. And then later that season, there was a situation where there was a snowstorm, I think, in Philadelphia when they were supposed to play the Eagles. And that was the time where a game had to get moved to a Tuesday that was originally supposed to be a Sunday. And that was week 16. Week 17, both teams went back and they played the following Sunday. So it can be done. It's inconvenient, but oddly enough, I do trust the NFL to get these games in and do it in a fashion that is relatively fair, even if it's inconvenient. And I guess the one benefit of so many teams not allowing fans is that you can kind of move around some of these bye weeks because people aren't basing their, trips and stuff to go to some of these games. So that's not as much of a concern right now in a lot of stadiums. You can get creative with the schedule. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to these teams taking the utmost precautions and making sure there aren't outbreaks. And I'm looking at, it's not only the responsibility of the teams, but the people that live in these cities. I look at Brown County in Wisconsin, which is where Green Bay is, and there's COVID outbreaks that are going crazy right there right now. And I'm worried about players from my favorite team getting exposed to this when they're not necessarily doing anything wrong. So it's not just the NFL doing everything right. It is literally everyone in the country doing things the right way, following protocols to ensure that NFL football can continue.
All right. Our next topic, I should say, is our takeaways from week 3 and what we're looking for in week 4. So for me, my takeaway for week 3, I watched the Red Zone channel because the Dolphins weren't playing Sunday. So I watched the Red Zone channel all day. So I got to see a lot of the overtime between the Eagles and the Bengals. And I scratched my head because Doug Peterson, to me, is a really good coach. But I have to second guess this guy because in overtime, near the end of overtime, the Eagles get the ball probably around the Bengals, 42-yard line, okay? And they get a first down. And instead of trying to throw to get a little bit closer, maybe you get another 5 or 10 yards to make the kick a little bit easier for their kicker, they ran the ball on first and second downs, lost yardage, and then on third down, they finally throw, and, Carson Wentz throws incomplete. So now they're lining up for a 59-yard field goal, which is not a chip shot. I mean, that is a long, long kick. And, of course, they get flagged for illegal procedure, which moves them 5 yards back. Instead of, they're not going to kick a 64-yard field goal because if you miss it, then the Bengals have the ball in pretty good position. And all they need really is one completion of 10 yards maybe. And next thing you know, they're in field goal range at the end of the overtime. So I don't blame Doug Peterson for punting and taking the tie because the tie is better than the loss. But I really scratched my head and would in second guess running the ball on first and second down. And I get the Bengals were giving up a decent amount of yardage running the football. I get that part, but to me, it's you want to throw the football in that situation because at least if it's incomplete, the clock stops. And it's tougher to take a loss. At least you like to think Carson Wentz can get rid of the ball and everything. So that was really my head scratcher from week 3 is his game management there. And then as for week 4, the New York teams are horrible. The Jets, the Giants. I mean, New York football, this is what it was like in the 70s when the Jets and Giants were the dregs of the NFL. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but there is a generation of football fans about my age that are not Giants and Jets fans who live in New York. They're Cowboys fans, they're Dolphins fans, Seahawks fans, Raiders fans, Steeler fans, teams that were good in the 70s have a lot of fans that were lived in the New York City area because the Jets and the Giants were dog teams back in the 70s. And they're dog teams now in the early 2020s. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if Roger Goodell's a little bit concerned about the state of those two teams because it is the biggest media market. It is where the NFL is located. And it has to be very disconcerting that both these teams are just absolute horrible. And I understand the Giants have some issues with injuries with Saquon Barkley and, but it is just horrible what is going on in New York right now. And you're kind of curious which of these teams is going to get their first win first, and how bad is it going to get? So those are my 2 things from week 3 and week 4. Justin, since I'm looking at you, I'll let you go first. What your takeaways from week 3 and what are you looking for in week 4?
Well, I want to revisit that Monday night game because while I pointed out how fantastic Patrick Mahomes was, on the other side of the ball, you have the reigning MVP who I think a lot of the criticisms about Lamar Jackson after a performance like that are warranted, that the Ravens cannot play or they cannot win games if they have to play from behind. And that's mostly evident with their quarterback. There was a stat tweeted out the other night that the Ravens, since drafting Lamar Jackson, and I presume, this is only games that he has played, but since drafting him in 2018, they are 0-9 in games that they have trailed at halftime. Now, the fact that they've only trailed at halftime in 9 games in 2+ years is pretty impressive, but I think that goes to show when they've played the Chiefs, they haven't won. Their last 2 trips to the postseason, they went winless. They went one and done. And it's because you're not playing the Browns in the postseason. You're playing these other great teams that are going to challenge you for 4 quarters, and you're not going to hold the lead from start to finish. You're going to have to battle back. And this is a quarterback and a team that has not shown the ability to do that. And Lamar Jackson didn't even have 100 yards passing the other night. And while I think the Chiefs have a solid defense, they're not the 2015 Broncos or the 85 Bears or throw out any, classic defense you can think of. There's no excuse for that. And Jackson and the entire offense just looked flustered the entire night. And I wonder what happens when they play other good teams in the AFC that are able to get up early on them. Now, vice versa, just to throw in some love to another 2018 first-round quarterback, Robert's boy, Josh Allen. I compared him to a young Brett Favre the other day because obviously you have the big arm, but it's just that mentality, or just watching him, it's like 90% of the time he's going to do something fantastic and exciting. And then there's that 10% of the time when he's just going to do something crazy that's going to want to make you pull your hair out. I mean, that 4th quarter was one of the final drives for the Bills. And he rushes the ball and he crosses the line of scrimmage, and then he tries that lateral to no one in particular. It's funny. Like, we can crack jokes about it now in week 3 because the Bills ultimately won, and he made the winning play at the end. But there's going to come a time when he's going to cost himself doing a play like that. But I think it's still an exciting time to be a Bills fan. You finally have a quarterback that can make plays and win you games. And he might drive you crazy sometimes, just like Brett Favre used to with the Packers. But at the end of the day, you're going to be glad that you have him. So that's really my thing. And as far as week 4, I want to see how those Ravens bounce back.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I'm gonna pile on here with talking about Lamar Jackson. I looked up. Looks like he's started. He's listed as a starting quarterback in 25 games, and the Ravens won 21 of them. But I can't help but think of two of the biggest games he's played in, the playoff games in the last 2 seasons. That the Ravens lost both of those games, and a big reason why was that Jackson did not play well. He did, on paper, the numbers in the game from last season, the 2019 playoffs, look good. He threw for over 300 yards, I think, but his completion percentage was, just over 50, and he just did not play well up until it became garbage time, and he could throw the ball around a little bit more. I for all the criticism that Josh Allen gets, and obviously we can heap plenty on, the Sam Darnolds of the world who, haven't delivered, and, Baker Mayfield's in that group as well. Obviously Josh Rosen's just kind of out there. Jackson, he was the MVP last season, yes, but, he's really turned into, I think, a front runner quarterback when things are in the lead, and, they can run the ball and he doesn't have to, put up big numbers with his arm. The Ravens are in great shape. And if they can dominate with the run, all the power to them. They can be a contender and are a contender the last couple seasons. But as soon as they get behind, they just do not have the weapons on the outside. Yeah, they have a great tight end there, but all teams know that. And Jackson just hasn't shown yet that, he's that type of player. I mentioned front runner status. He has 1 fourth quarter comeback. And yes, that's a product of him being able to play on a team that has the lead a lot, and they've won a lot of their games and haven't trailed. But, that's just surprising to me that, regular season and playoffs in, 2+ years of playing now, he just has 1 fourth quarter comeback. Even Josh Rosen, I think, has more than that from his time in Arizona. So, that to me, looking at how he played against the Chiefs in particular, because, we were hyping this game last week. This really, for a lot of people was an AFC championship preview, possible AFC championship preview. And the way Jackson played, it's like, well, he really has to step it up if he's going to go toe to toe with Mahomes. That's for sure. For me in week 4, the Thursday night football schedule always grinds my gears. Last week we had to watch, the Dolphins of all teams and the Jaguars. Oh boy, the Battle of the Swamp.
Good game. I liked it.
I'm glad that it was on NFL Network, and my cheap cable customer behind didn't get to see it. And then this week we get treated to the barn burner that is the Broncos and the Jets, which should crush ratings records. I get that we've got some good games coming up. I think Chiefs Bills play on Thursday night in a couple weeks, so that'll be a treat. Again, being the homer that I am, obviously like that game. But they got to figure something out with this Thursday night football schedule, because you can't keep throwing trash to the masses and expect us to watch it every week. I get that millions of people will still tune in because they're suckers for football, but they need to really improve that schedule, or just get rid of Thursday night games altogether and focus on your Sunday night and Monday night products, which, the last few weeks we've been treated as some good games. But Thursday night's been a little iffy, especially at the start. So, Broncos Jets this week. Hoo boy, can't wait. And that's all I got to say about week 4.
Well, Robert, just before we move on quick, I did look up the Thursday night schedule, and I do want to point out, because the NFL has a rule where every team needs to play in a Thursday night game. So unfortunately, you're going to have obviously some bad teams that have to play Thursday night. You're not going to get great matchups every week. But there are some enticing Thursday night matchups coming up this season. You mentioned Chiefs, Bills, Packers, 49ers is a Thursday night game the day after my birthday in November. I wish I could have gotten a better birthday present than a matchup like that. Colts, Titans is a Thursday game. Cardinals, Seahawks, Cowboys, Ravens, Patriots, Rams. I mean, there are some fun, exciting matchups that we're going to get. But yeah, the early slate here, the first few weeks has been bad, but I think that's just a product of, like I said, every team has to play Thursday. It'll get better.
Okay. Our last topic, we're going to go to the NBA. We're at the finals. Finally, here it is, the beginning of October, where usually the NBA starts their training camps, and we're starting the finals. The Heat, 5th seed in the East, surprising, knocking off the Celtics and going up against the Lakers. And Robert wants all caps. Who you got? Well, you know, I know a lot of Miami people from Twitter, being Dolphins fan and everything, and the Heat have definitely had a heck of a run here. And, you know, I could see them being competitive in this series. I could see this series going 6 games. But that being said, the Lakers, I think, are the best team overall. And I think this team's on a mission, win one for Kobe. And I mean, it's hard to believe that happened 8 months ago. I mean, 7 months ago, over 7 months ago when Kobe passed away. And, you know, I think this is the late LeBron James is very determined to get that title in the memory of Kobe. So I like the Lakers in 6. Be a good series, some good close games, but I think the Lakers win it in 6 games. Justin, NBA, who you got?
Well, I think a lot of people are just going to look at the top end talent that the Lakers have, and obviously with LeBron and Anthony Davis, and say this isn't going to be much of a series. But I just want to point out that Jimmy Butler, who is now a member of the Heat, is very familiar with LeBron because he used to play for the Bulls. And Butler is one of the few players who has consistently given LeBron issues. He's a great defender on top of being a very good scorer. I just looked it up. In 34 games against each other, Butler and James have split the wins, 17 all. So that's probably more of a wash than a lot of people are willing to admit. The thing is that even if you slow down LeBron, I'm not sure who the Heat are going to have to shut down Anthony Davis. That's what gives the Lakers the advantage, is they are so top heavy that a lot of teams can't match up. What I did find interesting as an aside is that Eric Spoelstra, who's the Heat head coach and obviously was there when the Heat had LeBron and had the big three, he made some comments about the team culture, and he reeled off a bunch of names from Heat history that contributed to that culture. And he mentioned Dwayne Wade and Alonzo Mourning and stuff. And very peculiarly, he did not mention LeBron James. I wonder if there is some kind of rift there between LeBron and the Heat organization, whether it be Spoelstra, Pat Riley, or whatever, that LeBron didn't quite fit in to the extent that they wanted. I think that's a little interesting sidebar to this series. But I will take the Lakers. I'll agree with Chris. I say they take it in 6 games.
All right, Robert, you get the last word on this.
Yeah, you know, you look at the Lakers, and obviously you see Anthony Davis and LeBron James, and you think, oh, they've got this in the bag. But the Heat have some decent talent too. You know, not just Jimmy Butler, but Goran Dragic,
Tyler Hero.
Yeah, Tyler Hero. Yep. And you know, this is a team that, you know, they've shown, and especially on the Eastern Conference side, that, you know, they're a team to be reckoned with. You know, that they have, you know, they might not have the star power that Los Angeles has, but they certainly have the team to compete. I think this goes 7. I think the Lakers will win it, but I think the Heat will give them plenty of issues. You know, Ritz mentioned, you know, Jimmy Butler and his success over the years against LeBron, and just, you know, I think people are finally showing appreciation for Butler, because he, you know, he tends to get overlooked. You know, you've got the LeBrons of the world, Obviously other players in other cities that, kind of, the Kyrie Irvings, the Kevin Durant's of the world that get a lot of attention. But, Butler's always been this guy that, people respect him as a scorer. They might say, some good things about him, but he's not considered that, that superstar. They don't give him that respect. And I think in these playoffs, he's showing that he belongs in that echelon. He's a pretty good talent. So, I'm taking the Lakers in 7, but I expect this to be a competitive series. The Heat have shown that all playoffs. We saw what they did against the Celtics. The Heat could easily win this thing. People forget that the Lakers, after Davis and LeBron, their depth isn't exactly solid. So they need those two guys clicking on all cylinders. So if even one of them has an off night, they might be in trouble. So, but I think LeBron, the second best player of all time, and he'll stay the second best player of all time, will win another ring with the Lakers.
All right, that's going to wrap it up, folks. We appreciate you joining us. Our video last week had more than 1,200 views. That is, I think that's one of our best. So we appreciate
the best.
The best video. So we say thank you for tuning in, and whether you tuned in for 5 seconds or for the whole darn thing, we do appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game.